Hello, Shat listeners. Do you like scary movies? If you do, then you know the rules. You're not gonna make it if you drink or do drugs. All three of the hosts violated those rules this week. So in honor of Halloween, we decided to play a game. We're gonna release this podcast with almost no editing. What do you think about that, Sydney?
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower after Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Scream Queen Weathers.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. And additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Westworld, Lovecraft Country, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, you can hang out with us live all week long by following and subscribing to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
So, Gene, this is our annual celebration of the holiday of Halloween. We've done some good movies over the years. We've done Halloween. We've done The Shining. We did Halloween 4. We've done Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. So this year, we decided to go back to 1996 and review Wes Craven's satirical slasher film, Scream.
Scream needs no introduction, nor does its director, Wes Craven. The film stars David Arquette, Courtney Cox, Matthew Lillard, Rose McGowan, Skeet Ulrich, and Drew Barrymore. Released on December 20th, 1996, it follows the character of Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, a high school student in the fictional town of Woodsboro, California, who becomes the target of a mysterious killer in a Halloween costume known as Ghostface. The film combines black comedy and whodunit mystery with the violence of the slasher genre to satirize the cliches of the horror movie genre, popularized in films such as Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Wes Craven's own A Nightmare on Elm Street. Scream was considered unique at the time of its release for featuring characters who were aware of real-world horror films and openly discussed the cliches that the film attempted to subvert. Originally titled Scary Movie, Scream was bought by Dimension Films and retitled by the Weinstein brothers just before filming was complete. The production faced censorship issues with the Motion Picture Association of America and obstacles from locals while filming on location. It received positive reviews and was a financial success, earning $173 million worldwide, becoming the highest grossing slasher film until the release of Halloween in 2018. It still remains the highest grossing slasher film in adjusted dollars. The soundtrack by Marco Beltrami was also acclaimed and has since earned cult status. Scream marked a change in the genre as it cast already established and successful actors, which was considered to have helped it find a wider audience, including a significant female viewership. Scream was credited with revitalizing the horror genre in the 1990s, which was considered to be almost dead following an influx of direct-to-video titles and numerous sequels to established horror franchises of the 70s and 80s. These sequels drew decreasing financial and critical success as they exploited cliches upon which films in the genre had become reliant. Scream's success spawned a series of sequels, though only Scream 2, released the following year, achieved an equal level of commercial and critical success. In the years following the release of Scream and its sequels, they were accused of inspiring and even inducing violent crimes and murders. So Big D, Ash, we always ask what your memories are of the movie we're covering. This week, it's Scream, and I'm ashamed to say I've seen Scary Movie, but never seen Scream, the original.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of slasher movies. I think that they're absolutely fantastic. And I'm especially a huge fan of Wes Craven. I mean, one of my very favorite horror films is Nightmare on Elm Street. And I just think he's absolutely wonderful. And when I was 13 years old, I saw this with an aunt of mine who took me to go see it in the theater. And I remember loving absolutely every second of it. We were talking in our seats about like, who was it? Who did it? I thought it was super scary. I thought it was really cool. I thought the script was really good. Kevin Williamson, who wrote the script, he's absolutely famous for trying to capture these really highly intelligent teenagers. I mean, one of the most famous thing he ever did other than this was Dawson's Creek, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I think he did pretty well here. And I adored it then. I still do today. And I was really excited, especially for Gene, for you to get, introduced to the genre, because it's a fun one.
It is. Like growing up, I've talked about it before. I loved the stupid horror films. I loved all the Friday the 13th, except for 5 when it was the ambulance driver. The Nightmare on Elm Streets, I remember seeing them all in the theater. I couldn't wait. This was a genre I really loved, but it got dumb. It got stale. In the 80s, it was not only predictable, but it was boring. You have to have some grounding in reality. The characters will act a certain way in order to keep your interest. After a while, it just gets, oh, yep, here comes Jason. He's back again. This time it's lightning. Oh, shit, he's trapped under the lake, and it's some clairvoyant who brings him back. So by the time I got to college, horror movies were not even on my radar, sadly. But this was a big deal. When it came out, it was something different. People were talking about it. Hey, you got to see this. So I decided I'm going to get up the courage. There was a girl I'd kind of been talking to. I kind of liked her. So I said, let's do the old trope. Let's get her to a horror film. Maybe it'll get a little creepy. She'll snuggle over to me. Long story short, no, she did not snuggle with me. The date was a dud, but I still left the theater remembering this as a good film, and I enjoyed it that night as well.
So we dedicate this one to Scream novices and Scream veterans alike. Welcome to Halloween. Welcome to the Shat Spooktacular. Let's hit that trailer.
Hello?
Hello?
Who is this?
You tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
So I want to know who I'm looking at.
Someone is playing a deadly game.
It all began with a scream over 911.
Someone who's seen one too many scary movies. Now he's taken his love of fear
Hello?
Hello, Sydney.
one step too far.
Do you like scary movies?
What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a scary movie. Number 1, you can never have sex.
It's me.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back. Get another beer, you want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back.
He didn't make the rules.
The police are always on track, but they watch prom night at same time.
He just kills by them. Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door. Don't try to hide.
Everybody, the suspect!
You're not scared, are you?
Scream.
High school student Casey Becker receives a flirty phone call from an unknown person during which they discuss horror movies. However, the caller turns sadistic and threatens her life. He reveals that her boyfriend, Steve, is being held hostage on her patio and demands that she answer questions about horror films. After Casey gets one wrong, Steve is murdered in front of her. When Casey refuses to answer more questions, she is murdered by a masked assailant as her parents come home. Shortly after, they find her gutted corpse hanging from a tree.
I don't know if there is another opening scene of a film, especially a horror film, that is more iconic than this one. And I remember sitting in the theater and watching the opening, and even knowing then at 13, like something special is happening on screen. And I did not know a ton about Drew Barrymore at the time, but I knew she was a really big name, and she famously is on the poster and all of that. And so everybody thought she was going to be a huge part of this movie. And so the movie opens up, and the balls to have her die so quickly, and not just die quickly, but die really brutally. It kind of changed the game up for horror as it made the audience in this movie question absolutely everything. And I know when we did Rushmore a couple of weeks ago, we discussed like this whole art of movie making for Wes Anderson. And it's not just for like the hoity-toity, like artsy films. I mean, Wes Craven, the way that he builds tension and terror in his films is as artistic as the way that Wes Anderson builds his little worlds, because Wes Craven, he still has it at this point. He's scary. It works. And guys, the use of that popcorn, that Jiffy Pop alone, that literally is building tension and explodes. Like, it's so meta. It's so on the nose. But because it's so clever, it just really works. And it's still so fucking good.
For a lot of movies that we've covered, we wish that we hadn't seen them before because we want to see them with fresh eyes. But once you've seen it, you've seen it. And so I was really glad that with Scream, I didn't know what to expect going into it. I knew it was satirical. I knew it was very popular. I knew that there were a few memes that came out of it. But for the most part, I didn't know who the killer was. I didn't know like what exactly was going to happen, where the plot was going to take me. And so I was looking at it with fresh eyes. I was completely sold on this scene. I thought that's what the movie was going to be. 90 minutes of this opening scene, that terror, that suspense that we felt with Drew Barrymore. There's mind games, there's violence, there's that sad irony of the parents coming home but not seeing Casey as she's dying. And there's like allusions to the genre. It's poking fun at itself, but Craven's not going overboard. To me, Ash, I agree with you. This opening few minutes is just perfect. It's so fucking good. And I honestly thought, because I dared to dream, that we're going to get 90 minutes of this.
Yeah, the only way you're going to prove that no one is safe is if you kill the character on the poster. You go there thinking, hey, she's going to be in it, and she's gone. And this marketing bait and switch, it's a great idea. The only film that I can think that has topped this, did either of you see The Suicide Squad, the James Gunn movie? They kill off, and again, spoiler alert, anybody out there who hasn't seen it, just cover your ears for a couple seconds. They kill 6 characters that are featured in the trailer within 10 minutes. Once that happens, you're like, holy shit, anything could go.
Yeah, but like everybody knew that something probably was going to happen to them because they knew they were introducing this other Suicide Squad. So it wasn't really like a bait and switch, right? Like this was, hey, Drew Barrymore is going to be in this movie. She's a hot name in 96 and she's fucking gutted in the first 10 minutes.
I'd go with Big D on this, though. This would be like if he had the Avengers assemble and then like 4 of them just died in the opening battle. You're like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, I told you.
They knew they were getting a new squad.
I didn't know.
Who knew that?
Because it's the whole point of the movie that they're introducing a whole other series.
Yes, but they didn't tell you there were 2 teams.
And that's such a shitty movie.
No, the new one, I liked it. I thought it was
really
good.
liked it.
I liked it. I thought, and they're doing now a series with Peacemaker, which looks fucking dynamite with John Cena. But the movie's based on, it's going to subvert all the slasher tropes, all the cliches of the genre. They still let some sneak in. Drew Barrymore, she's going around. Casey, she's going to lock the doors. Why weren't they locked to begin with? Okay, they live on a farm. I'll go with that. But the big difference I found in this movie is in most 80s slasher films, it didn't matter what the people said. The dialogue was irrelevant. It was like, hey, come here. Let's get a beer. Let's have sex. Yeah, that's all they were saying. Here, you got to pay attention. When the sheriff is interviewing the students and Deputy Dewey says to him, he says, hey, do you think Billy's the killer? His reply of 20 years ago, I would have said yes, but now I don't know. That should have told us as an audience. The typical slasher film, they're throwaway lines. Here in Wes Craven, you have to pay attention to what the characters are actually saying.
Yeah, but it doesn't completely abandon the slasher flick either, though, because slasher flicks encourage audience participation. Like, you don't go to a movie theater or a drive-in to see a slasher movie in silence, right? You don't watch them at home and have people over and popcorn and beers and be like, shh, I'm trying to pay attention here. Like, that's not what slasher flicks are about. It's about screaming in each other's faces. It's about laughing. It's about yelling at the screen. Get the fuck out of there. Don't open that door. And Scream gets that, and it openly invites us to play along. There's fucking movie trivia. Like, the Casey scene is literally doing movie trivia about Halloween and Friday the 13th. And when she answered that Jason was the killer in Friday the 13th, which we have covered on this podcast, I screamed out loud like, no, it's his mom.
Yeah, this was an active participation film. No one was silent. And I got to tell you, someone who saw it in the theater, when Henry Winkler is out in the hallway and he talks to the janitor, Fred the janitor, and the camera pans and we see it is a Freddy Krueger knockoff with the sweater, the hat. The entire crowd erupted in applause.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's so interesting about this movie is, I'm going to use the word meta way too much tonight because it is. It's this really meta take, which is why in like the sequel, it's so fascinating. Like the only thing they didn't do in this was be in a theater, which is why the opening of Scream 2 is set in a movie theater, right? Like it's like that next level up, and it's just so smart, you guys. Oh, so much smarter than Suicide Squad.
Sidney Prescott. I love those are the options. Suicide Squad or Scream.
The two options. There's nothing in between.
Happy Halloween. Well, Sidney Prescott struggles with the impending first anniversary of her mother Maureen's murder by her lover, Cotton Weary. While waiting at home for her friend Tatum Riley, Sidney receives a taunting phone call. After she hangs up, she is attacked by the killer, but evades him. Sidney's boyfriend, Billy Loomis, arrives shortly after, but after he drops his cell phone, Sidney suspects him of making the call and flees. Billy is arrested, and Sidney spends the night at Tatum's house, where she receives another ominous call.
I don't think there's much that this movie does better than it kind of flipping the script on female characters in horror films. And that really comes down to Sidney. Sidney, we talk a lot of times about how like a certain character has to work in order for a film to work. And Sidney has to work in order for not just this movie, but the franchise as a whole to work. You have to like Sidney, you have to see yourself in Sidney, and you have to like buy that she's this clever, smart girl. And I think Neve Campbell does a really, really fantastic job in playing her. I had only ever seen Neve Campbell before in Party of Five. I don't know if either of you ever watched that show, but I used to really like Party of Five, and she was one of the 5 children that were orphaned, and really old school Matthew Fox from Lost, if you want to get like in his deep catalog.
You're really selling it now.
It was good. It was good. And that's the only thing I'd ever seen her in, so I didn't really know what to think, but she's really good. And I think that what's really great is like her laying out the stupidity of the other female characters that came before her. Like, you're supposed to run outside rather than run upstairs. Like she makes fun of Craven's previous films. She makes fun of other slasher films. And I would argue, and this may not be popular, but I would argue that Sidney Prescott is the best of the Scream Queens because she is so beautiful. She is so smart. She is so badass. And for me, it's like this vindication for female viewers of horror movies, like to finally see somebody like her. And it was I think like think about Laurie Strode, right? Laurie Strode's fun and Halloween, but why the fuck is she in the closet? Like I get it's an iconic scene and he gets to wave his little knife around and knock the hangers around and it's supposed to be scary, but why the fuck are you in the closet, Laurie? Run the fuck out of the house. And that's what Sidney does here, and it works.
And she isn't alone. Like she's not the only clever or strong female character in this movie. Casey, the first victim, Drew Barrymore, she was no idiot. Like she died, but she didn't do things absolutely wrong. Gail Weathers, a TV reporter, Courtney Cox, she's tough. And Tatum is clever and unafraid, and she knows about Tom Cruise's dick and all the right moves. So A+ to her.
Mm-hmm.
So Ash, I'm going to disagree with you. I think Neve Campbell's, the pinnacle of her films is Wild Things. There is a scene with her and Denise Richards and Matt Dillon.
Yes, yeah, Big D. Everybody's seen that movie.
It's wonderful.
I haven't seen that movie.
Oh, it's
You've never
Gene,
seen
it's
Wild Things with a
wonderful.
threesome? It is such a stupid fucking movie. I mean,
Gene,
the threesome
it's
scene's really, it's sad. It's very disappointing. Don't get yourself all excited.
I'm going to challenge that because there's a little movie called The Craft that also came out in 1996 that is way better than both of these movies.
And let's remember that Matt Dillon is a Mamaroneck native. He's one of the local boys. So yeah, that was another reason to watch that scene. But Ash, you're right. The female characters are smart, but it's also, they're making a comment, I think, on high school students. At this point, we get to see the girls are in the bathroom. They are brutal. They're discussing Sidney's mother's rape, the murder. It goes beyond mean. In the 80s movies, high school kids seem to be stupid. They were dumb. They were horny. They were drunk. Here, it's almost as if the movie's telling us that these kids deserve what's happening to them.
I don't know if I would go that far as much as I mean, because it was definitely, this is an angsty movie, but I don't think for those reasons. But I do think that what it does do is that with them being so clever, like you're talking about Jean with Casey, she fights for her life, right? Like she runs, she fights, she scrapes, she tries to live. And in other slasher movies, that doesn't happen. They just kind of get murdered, right? They're just these girls who get stabbed a couple of times and then they're dead. Seeing her fight like she does and claw her way for like her last gasping breath, that's what's so much scarier. And another thing that's different about this than like a Friday the 13th or a Nightmare on Elm Street, where you got a girl in a, a nightshirt being, slaughtered on the ceiling by Freddy in her sleep. Like that's much different than fighting for your life the way that these girls do. And that makes it really disturbing in a way that, I don't know, I think it's just still scary today.
One thing that surprised me about this movie that I didn't expect was the amount of times it made me remember being a junior high schooler or a high schooler, which, I mean, a lot of times when we watch these movies in the 80s, I was a kid. I mean, I was a kid. Like I was an elementary school kid for those. But the ones that hit smack around that 1995, 1996 mark, it brings back a lot of like things that we experience culturally that people might not experience these days. And Sydney and Billy in Scream, they reference the underwear rule during their surprisingly brief makeout scene. And I'd completely forgotten about the underwear rule. Like when you've been sexually active for, 20 something fucking years, like you don't think back to the time when it was like, oh, I'm going to keep my underwear on. Like we can make out, but I'm keeping my underwear on. And I never thought to ask this question as a teenager, because I was just frustrated by the rule itself, not like the motive behind the rule. Is the underwear rule about modesty? Like, is it about like, I don't want to show my breasts and vagina too soon to this dude? Or is the underwear rule more about keeping layers between yourself and sexual intercourse? What was the deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was different for everybody, but I think it's more like keeping your boyfriend happy without having to have sex yet. It was it's like the modern day chastity belt, just much thinner and without a lock.
So to be clear, for the underwear rule, if I would have just asked, hey, listen, we don't have to be touching. Could you stand over there and just show me the things? I probably could have gone away with that.
I mean, maybe. I mean, was there a bra rule?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was top and bottom. Yeah.
I mean, like, if you're grabbing the boobs over the bra, does it really matter if you're grabbing them under it?
Yes. Yes, it absolutely matters.
No, I mean for the girl. Like, I mean, what's that? Like, what's that difference, right? Because nothing's like going inside your boob, so it's a little different. But yeah, the underwear rule is just a way to, be sexy without having to have sex.
No, I think you guys aren't doing dry humping justice. Dry humping was a great thing. It was close enough. You could get tugged off in your underwear. You could do just enough manual stimulation. It worked. It was good. And it was just one of those mental layers, I think, that people have. You're drawing the line in the sand. I think today the kids do it. They'll have anal sex because they can still be virgins. So I think it's kind of changed now. But back then, it was a way that you could do everything but still not have the guilt.
Gene, go ahead.
What the fuck is happening in Florida?
No, I think like
you think all the kids are fucking each other in the ass to stay virgins?
I have heard from multiple people who have children of that age that kids don't consider oral sex or anal sex anything that violates or changes them being a virgin.
I want a time machine.
I mean, I don't believe that oral sex is sex, but that being said, like, I mean, anal sex is sex for some people, but I don't know. I guess I just didn't dry hump with anybody growing up because that sounds really, first of all, it makes me feel gross to even say the words dry hump. And then to think about some dude like coming in his pants while on top of me with my underwear on, like that just sounds awful.
Yeah, you do what you got to do. Cleanup was easy. It was
Doesn't sound like it was easy.
Yeah, I mean, you had sticky underwear, but it wasn't a mess on the bed. You're not losing DNA.
Ash, I hate to break it to you, but once Finn gets a little bit older, he's going to be dry humping every surface in the house.
Yes.
How many? You got any banisters?
Oh, Ash, wait until you get those socks that look like they've been starched.
They just like break in half.
Yes, those JIT socks are going to be deadly. You're going to be like, Finnegan, what are you doing with these socks?
Stop it. My child is an angel. He will never get a hard on. Continue. Gross.
Now you cursed him. You can't say shit like that around Halloween. He'll never get a boner again.
Never.
Will he never have one? Okay, gross. Ugh.
Wait, don't babies get boners sometimes? I thought that was a thing.
I don't know. I would just much rather him have actual sex than dry hump. Like, go out and have sex with a condom rather than coming in your pants.
You can't get pregnant with anal sex. It's the ultimate contraceptive.
You also can like not get pregnant through vaginal sex if you protect yourself. So just saying.
You can also not get pregnant by commissioning movies with Shat The Movies. Billy is released and suspicion shifts to...
Are you drinking too, or is it just
suspicion?
Yes, of course I'm
good.
drinking.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
all right.
Awesome.
Who
Welcome
isn't?
aboard.
We always drink when we
Shush.
record at night.
Welcome aboard.
It's so much better.
Commission
Commission a film so we can be suspicious shits. I don't know why we record during the day.
Yeah, fuck the day.
Wait, no. Literally months ago, like a couple months ago, we were like, we should always do it during the day. We're so sharp. Nights are a disaster.
It depends on
That's
the
not
film.
true. Are you drinking out of the bottle?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's a little bit left.
What is?
What is it? Uncle
All of
Nearest.
a sudden became 15 again. Jesus Christ.
God, I feel like this should be the episode we release without editing.
Yeah.
This should be like
Oh,
I agree. 'Cause I
God.
don't want to edit it.
the uncut
Oh, don't say that.
version. I'll
Billy,
edit this one.
no, because it's so good.
Oh,
We
yeah.
don't want to deny anybody its quality.
The discussion of dry humping and my child getting boners, wonderful. This
Yeah,
is,
okay.
No,
this
all
has
that's
been a
gonna
great
stay in.
episode. And who
Yeah.
brought it up? Who always brings it up? Big D.
Bullshit. Ash, when you notice that your
Naked
supply
kids
of facial
kitty
tissues
boners.
and lotion are like strangely going low, where'd all the tissues go? Where did the lotion go? You'll know what it is.
You'll discover Tom's macrame in the garage and be like, oh my God, honey, I didn't know you were an artist. Billy is released and suspicion shifts to Sydney's father, Neil Prescott, as the calls have been traced to his phone. School is suspended in the wake of the murders. Tatum's boyfriend, Stu, throws a party to celebrate the school's closure. The party is attended by Sydney, Tatum, Randy Meeks, and many other students. Reporter Gail Weathers attends, uninvited, to cover the situation. Tatum's brother, Deputy Sheriff Dewey Riley, also looks out for the murderer at the party. The killer corners Tatum in the garage and murders her by crushing her neck with the garage door. Billy arrives to speak to Sydney privately, and the two have sex.
I am obsessed with Matthew Lillard. I love him. I think he's fantastic. I think his performance in this is absolutely wonderful. He's also in a not appreciated enough film that is a horror film that I absolutely adore, which is 13 Ghosts.
No.
I watched 13 Ghosts after watching this because I was like, fuck, I want to see 13 Ghosts. And it is still so utterly brilliant. And I just think he's wonderful. And Stu, and he's in Hackers too. Like, fuck, like, please someone commission Hackers.
Serial killer.
But Stu is kind of an asshole. And I didn't realize, I just thought he was kind of charming and wanted to make out with him when I first saw it, but he's kind of a dick. And I don't know. I don't know if anyone could buy that he wasn't involved from like the first time you saw it, because it's pretty blatant. He's the dude that throws the party. He's the dude that's all glib about death, like never alone. And I don't know. Am I alone here that thinking the reveal is pretty obvious from like the get-go in this film?
Fucking Gene Lyons fell for it. I thought it was a false trail. I thought it was too obvious. I thought for sure 100% Billy was the killer. So I was partially right, I guess. But I got to say, Ash, this is probably my least favorite Lillard role, despite the perfect delivery of, you fucking hit me with the phone, dick. I loved him in Hackers, as you mentioned, and SLC Pump.
Yes.
And now I kind of want to see 13 Ghosts because it sounds great. Like I read the synopsis and said, it sounds like a good movie.
Oh, it is so bad, but so good. Like it's meant to be bad, but good. And there's a girl with great tits that's naked the whole movie.
And Shaloub's in it, right?
Tony Shalhoub is in it. He is. And F. Murray Abraham and Shannon Elizabeth. And it's really good.
Yeah, I think you're using utterly brilliant too much. That's it's entertaining.
Or not enough.
It's frightening, but Gene, it's okay. It's worth watching. It's creepy, but
Gene,
there's no
you
doubt
love
that
it.
Matthew Lillard, he is Steve-O from Jackass. He's annoying. You can have him in small doses. I did not like him when he was on until we get the, hey, Dick, you cut me too deep. I'm woozy. That worked for me. But the rest of the stuff, I was like, get him off screen. But we have to start in this movie now. We're back in the theater. you have to start listening to what the movie is telling you because they're giving us the answers. Now, I don't know. Gene, you're the virgin. I've seen it. So when we get Randy, who is the most knowledgeable character of horror films, he works in like a Blockbuster knockoff. God's sake, he's the expert. We should listen to him. And he says there's always a formula, a very simple formula. I'm telling you, the dad is a red herring. It's Billy. And then they discuss the motives. It's the millennium. Motives are incidental. If you paid attention, did you pick up on that? And did that kind of trigger you to think that Billy was the killer?
Yeah, 100%. I thought all the evidence was pointing there. And especially when he got arrested and then they let him go only because of the phone call. I was like, oh, it's fucking for sure him. Also, the whole like losing her virginity thing, like everything pointed to Billy for me. But the Stu thing completely blindsided me.
Yeah, so I think the Billy thing, I fell for the fake death part, right? When he gets like stabbed post-coital. I fell for that part because I definitely thought it was him with like that dramatic like drop of the phone where like you hear it like echo through the room when his cell phone falls and she's like, oh my God, it was you. You know, that I was like, okay, it's him. And then he gets fake killed. But I think that the thing that maybe, because I think this is a fairly almost perfect movie, but one of the things that I think for sure it could have used more of is some of those parody type killings. Because I referenced in the beginning about how you have like a very real death with Casey, which I think is a great in your face way to start the movie. But part of the fun of slasher films are the ridiculous deaths. They're the ones that just make no sense. And this movie, I think, may not have had enough because I do think it's a fine balance. But thank God for Rose McGowan's Tatum, because that death, such an iconic death. And I laugh every time she goes for the doggy door. And when I saw this in theaters, some dude in the theater went, your tits are just too big. Like as she was running for the door, because it's like, there's no way those things are going to fit through there. And if they do, her ass certainly isn't. And y'all, Rose McGowan, she looks so good in this. But here's the deal. That door would never lift. It's insane. Never. But it grounds it in the slasher category. And without the Tatum death, I think this movie would fail. It would take itself too seriously in the wrong places. Because you can't be as sarcastic in tone as they are with this script and be only brutal with the deaths. Like there's got to be an equitable balance somewhere in there.
Right. They kept you smiling. And I think they balanced out the seriousness as well by making the killer's costume so utterly ridiculous. It just looks funny. Like he clearly can't see very well. It gets caught on everything. And my favorite thing about the way it like streams in the wind and like the shape of it is every time he runs into like a furniture or an appliance, like the way he like basically like flops on the ground. It's funny to look at. And I find it hard to believe that they went for like the scariest thing possible. I think they went for the funniest thing possible.
Well, and like the way the costume works, he looks like one of those wiggly dudes like out in front of Mattress Firm that like blows in the wind. Like that's what he looks like. And especially with like it being on somebody who's built like Matthew Lillard, like it's a pretty funny gag.
But I can't take the killer serious. He's like an awkward puppet. He's off balance all the time. It's like he was on roller skates. Okay. He's constantly flailing about. He's slipping. He's falling. Every victim, he's either fucking with them or he's got some kind of motor function issue. He's flopping on the floor. Rose opens like the refrigerator door and it knocks him over. Like it was hitting him with a bat. He does cartwheels over the victims. He is not frightening. It's comical. I don't get, and I don't know why does he always go for people's stomachs? You go into a stomach through like a jean jacket. That's difficult. Gene, how would you defend your stomach? And wouldn't you go for the neck or the head?
So the difficulty of the stomach actually is a stab coming from low. You have to clear your abdomen and your core away from the blade and then actually move your arm out like so at a 90-degree angle in front of you. But then what gets difficult is you then have to move the arm up and away and then wrap the attacking arm. And so it is actually a very complex motion and difficult to defend. If I were getting slashed to the stomach or the head, it's easier to defend something coming in my face. That came out way wrong, but it's easier to defend that. But if you're asking, would I rather get stabbed in the gut or the neck? Yeah, the fucking neck any day of the week. I'm sorry. Yeah, the fucking gut any day of the week.
I was about to say, hold on, wouldn't it be worse to get stabbed in the neck?
I was like, shit, Krav Maga must be teaching him something I don't know.
Take a neck wound.
I'll have to confer with everybody back at the gym and I'll get a poll going and see where we go for that. But, Big D, I think that killer being comical is intentional. And the movie is not, And the movie is a slasher film, but like Ash said kind of at the top of the pod, it's doing so much more work. And this movie is so full of pop culture references that just I pointed to the screen, like Leonardo DiCaprio in the meme. Like when Randy replies, "Oh, really, Alicia?" to Stu's as if. But the one that got my attention, which again takes me right back to being a kid in the 90s, was when Tatum was talking about the Richard Gere gerbil story. And if you guys don't know this story, you weren't a kid during the 90s, because every kid from the 90s knows the story. Mm-hmm. And I never bothered researching it until now, because I thought, well, it's not true. But I never thought about like, why did it actually spread? So I looked into it, and basically this rumor is actually, it has its, and I hate to be a social justice warrior here, but it has its roots in homophobia. It was attached to a lot of celebrities. Now, there was, in fact, an instance on record where a 26-year-old man who did not provide his name, and it's protected, did go in, and he was passing blood in his stool, and they checked it out. And what he had done is he had taken a cardboard, tube, stuck the gerbil in it. The gerbil went up into his ass and died. And the thinking was that the gerbil scratches and inside the rectum, the anus, and it causes a pleasurable sensation. So it died up there. But what happened is, as it scratched, the inflammation and the trauma to the insides actually swelled it up, so he could not pass it. So they did find the gerbil. They got it out of there. He went on antibiotics, but it wasn't Richard Gere. And the rumor stuck to Richard Gere because he was rumored to be a closeted homosexual at the time in the 90s. But here's where it gets really interesting and squeamish, is that an anonymous prankster started flooding fax machines in Hollywood with a phony press release from the ASPCA claiming that Richard Gere had abused a gerbil, and that's how it spread.
Oh, this was the urban legends of the 90s. This was the internet fake news. Back then, everybody heard these stories and you couldn't verify them, so you believed them. But in college, I don't know if I ever talked about this. One of my roommates early on was like an x-ray tech. So he would come home after like his night shift at the hospital with the craziest, like, I don't know, with torso or whatever, like x-rays, with all the shit people would put up their ass. People would put bottles, people would put light bulbs. It was the craziest stuff. So it seems believable because people's asses, I don't get it, but they'll just put everything up there.
Including teenagers' dicks.
Cold open.
They'll still be virgins.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Sydney and Billy are confronted by the killer, who attacks Billy, Gail, and Dewey, having discovered an abandoned car that belongs to Neil Prescott. What the fuck? Oh, hold on. Sydney and Billy are confronted by the killer, who attacks Billy. Gail and Dewey, having discovered an abandoned car that belongs to Neil Prescott, make their way back. Gail tries to escape in her van, but drives off the road and crashes. Meanwhile, Dewey is stabbed in the back. Stu and Randy appear and accuse each other of being the killer, and Sydney retreats into the house where she finds Billy wounded but alive. She gives Billy the gun before he lets Randy into the house and shoots him. Billy reveals that he feigned his injuries and is actually the killer, with Stu shortly outing himself as the accomplice.
Okay, so Ash, here we get a female trope that lasted. Women can't drive. Gail driving that fucking van straight into the tree and putting her hands up had me laughing. But we're presented here where Stu and Randy, they appear on the porch and they're accusing each other. They're like the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing. You don't know who it is. If you are in that situation, if you're Sydney, I would obviously say hold the gun, just get them both on the ground. What would you do? How do you decide who is the guilty party?
You close the door and you call the cops, because it doesn't matter, because one of them is the killer. So if you choose wrong, you're dead. If you don't choose wrong, yay you, but you close the door and you call the police.
But aren't you assuming that the killer will then kill the other person? So
right,
now
but you won't be dead.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm cool with that.
You're still alive.
I like the rationale.
Although clearly Randy's innocent because Randy's an idiot and can't do anything right. So, I mean, like, it's clearly Stu. Stu's the bad guy. Yeah. But the other useless person in this movie is Sydney's fucking dad. Oh. I had forgotten how useless Neil Prescott is. Dude, you're in a closet. You can't make noise during the party. Like, how many people are walking by? All you've got are your little hands tied and the duct tape over your mouth. Make some noises, and maybe somebody will hear. Throw your shoulder into the door, and maybe somebody will be like, hey, Stu, what's that banging in that closet right there? And then your plan falls apart. He needs to break out. He needs to overtake two skinny ass dudes who without a weapon probably can do nothing. Y'all, Neil deserved to die. Sydney does not deserve a dad that's this shitty.
I second that.
And it's so much worse than that. He left Sydney alone. I thought her mom had been dead for like 15 years or some shit. It was less than a year after her mother was raped and murdered. Like, I understand trusting your kid a la Risky Business, but talk about tempting fate. What the fuck, Neil? One character we haven't talked about, though, is Dewey. And I love Dewey. And we kind of laugh at Dewey for being like a 25-year-old trying to act like an adult. He's starstruck by Gale Weathers. And he's struggling like every day to get respect from anyone. And everyone thinks he's a big joke. And as I'm laughing at this like fictional character, I realize, wait a second, this is most cops that I've met. Like, this is actually a very accurate portrayal of cops. He wants to be cool. He invites himself into the party. He wants to use his position of power to attract Gale. He lets her break rules and come along with him. I'm a cop. I got all the special access. Come with me. If Dewey really wanted to protect Tatum and Sydney, is he going to take him to a party? No, he's going to take him to his parents' house and he'd guard it.
Yeah, but Dewey's a fucking idiot. Dewey's out getting ice cream instead of... I thought the whole movie, I was like, yes, Dewey is the killer. He's playing dumb. This is an act. No, that's actually Dewey. Dewey's an idiot. He didn't do a good job protecting anyone.
He's a kid, too. Where did we find out he's 25 years old?
He says that.
Does he say that?
Yeah. Gail talks
well, then I
about
guess it's true.
Gail talks about her demographics. She said she's very popular with like 24 to whatever year.
Right. But like, he's a kid. And so like, you know, I think a lot of it is the whole thing, like the whole party in general, I think is really realistic that's what would happen with a bunch of teenagers. I mean, hurricane parties in New Orleans alone prove that like teenagers and college students are dumb. They do things in dangerous situations. And it's like, well, Casey got killed, but that was Casey's problem, right? Like, this isn't going to happen to me. And so I think that Dewey is doing that here, right? He's taking them to the party and he's like, hey, go have a good time. Because statistically, what's the likelihood that you're going to get murdered by a dude in a really cheap Halloween costume? Even though they almost did. And his sister did. And he got stabbed. Nobody's talking, so I'm just going to keep moving fast.
I was just looking at Big D's face. I was like, what's going on over there? He was thinking real deep about it. What are the odds I'm going to get killed by someone in a shitty costume?
Let me pull up my mathematics. Let me get my abacus so that I can let you guys know.
Now, Ash, I'm going to share an opinion that you might disagree with, and I do welcome feedback on this because I was sad to even think it. Beyond the first scene of the movie, there are no scares in this movie. Like, people get killed, there are jokes, but what happened to being scary? I found myself wishing for Halloween 4 or any classic slasher movie that just earnestly wanted to spook me. And I think what I love about those old slasher movies, the Halloweens, the Friday the 13th, is that there's a comfort and a charm in like these guys who are trying their best to act like Donald Pleasance. They're committed completely to the lore and the gore and making this world real. And I'm laughing at the movie, but Donald Pleasance is not trying to make me laugh. And there's just a wholesomeness to that I miss. And this movie's not doing it.
Well, Gene, funny you mentioned Donald Pleasance. This is the first time I realized that Billy Loomis, his last name Loomis, is for
Dr. Loomis.
I'd never picked up on that before. Yes, it's great, but I disagree. I think there's two kinds. There's jump scares or the parts that kind of creep you out and have you feel uncomfortable. The scariest part of the movie for me is where Gale is hiding in Dewey's like Jeep Cherokee and the killer, we don't know which one it is wiggling the keys. He disappears under the car and the doors yes?
That's Sydney in the car, not Gale.
Oh,
yeah.
Gale was in a ditch.
Sorry. Yeah, correct.
By her bad woman driving, according to you.
Yes. So Sydney's trapped in Dewey's Jeep Cherokee. The killer's wiggling the keys. He disappears under the car. And then the door locks start going. And we're seeing over her shoulder, typical, The hatchback opens. To me, that was creepy. But this goes back to the problem I had in the movie. You have two killers who are 120 pounds soaking wet. They have the balance of someone who's been drinking on roller skates. How are they picking up fucking Kenny and putting him on the roof of the van? How are they picking up the principal and stringing him from the goalposts?
No. You can't do that. You can't judge this movie on that because that is a slasher movie thing. How does Michael Myers get his head chopped off and then come back a movie later? Like, that's part of slasher movies.
How does Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, pick people up and pin them to fucking walls?
Right.
I know.
I mean, that's part of the slasher trope.
Okay, so we're just supposed to dismiss that?
Yeah, you can't. But right, that they're doing that intentionally. Like, it is intentional. Like, how is Casey in the tree gutted before her parents come around the corner? Like, it's absolutely implausible. But that's part of the slasher trope.
Also, you got two dudes. Steamwork.
Yeah,
And to the scariness, I would call bullshit on that because I think that the ending part, the way they build the tension, inside the house is such a great set, right?
Yeah.
Like Stu's house is such an iconic set, and everything that happens in the house, especially after the reveal. I mean, when the dudes start stabbing each other, nobody was expecting that. Nobody was expecting to see them do those kinds of things. And that alone is disturbing. So I think that you're just cold and cynical now in your older age. And if you were a teenager, you would have thought it was creepy.
I think also the technology, the camera bit, the little camera gambit, I thought added tension where there's a 30-second delay conveniently.
Oh, yeah.
And you're seeing from the van what's happening. Gene, that didn't add a little element that you were like, oh, no, here he comes.
No.
Yeah.
Because what's happening during that scene, it's fucking Randy going like, whoa, look out behind you. And then you're supposed to look out behind him because there's somebody behind him.
It's Jamie Kennedy. What are you going to do?
Yeah, true.
Well, Gail, who survived the crash, intervenes, and Sydney takes advantage of this to turn the tables on her attackers, knocking out Billy with an umbrella and dropping I thought she stabbed him with the fucking umbrella.
Yeah,
she does.
Yeah, straight up stabs him.
Gail, who survived the crash, intervenes, and Sydney takes advantage of this. Gail, who survived the crash, intervenes, and Sydney takes advantage of this to turn the tables on her attackers, stabbing Billy with an umbrella and dropping a TV set on Stu's head, killing him. Billy then awakens and attacks Sydney, but Gail shoots him. Randy is revealed to be wounded but alive, and he remarks that the killer always resurfaces for one last scare. Sydney takes the gun and shoots Billy in the head, killing him for good. As the sun rises and police arrive, Dewey, badly injured, is taken away by ambulance, and Gail makes an impromptu news report about the night's events.
So now we finally had all the big reveals. We know what's going on. Dad's been in the closet. He's a fucking red herring. And we find out that Billy killed the mom the year earlier because she was cheating on with his dad. So I don't remember another movie, a serial killer movie like this or slasher flick where there was actually family drama that caused it. I thought that was a nice change, and we should be okay with it. There shouldn't be some big motive on why they did it. And I think that's part of it. Randy, early on, if we'd listened to him, he said it's the millennium. Motives are incidental. And I like that they closed the movie out with what they told us in the beginning. So I thought it all made sense. And even though it's illogical, I was okay.
No family drama. Like, the whole plot of Friday the 13th is driven by family drama. Why is Jason's mom killing everybody? Because of family drama.
Yeah, it didn't destroy the family. It's because Jason died. They were off having sex and didn't pay attention to him.
It didn't destroy the family.
No. She lost a child. She lost a child. It
destroyed the family. And I also love that I just want to read everybody big these notes here. Killing the mother because she ruined Billy's family makes complete sense.
It does.
Killing three does not. So I'm just going to leave that there. For those of you who write these nice ass reviews, like, Big D's the heart of the podcast. Kill the mom. She's a whore.
So, Ash, your response to me saying that there were no scares in the middle of the movie was to say that there was a lot of tension and activity toward the end of the movie. Totally agree with that. And that's my point. The movie didn't really need a middle. The beginning and the end are fun, violent, and entertaining. Like Stu and Billy slicing each other up. Yeah, that shit's great. Gail and Sydney kicking ass. That shit's great. Randy being a poor man Seth Green. That's all right. These rapid fire deaths and terrific use of the house as a set are all great. I'm eating this up. And it really saved the movie from being just Wes Craven chuckling to himself. I think that's my big complaint is at some point, I think he was just making jokes for joke's sake. And I just wanted to nudge the movie and remind it you need to be scary.
No, but I think it's more comedy horror than horror comedy. I think the comedy definitely wins. The whole ending and what people remember is the I'm feeling woozy. That is the end of the movie that you remember. It's not Jason jumping out of the water and grabbing the one surviving counselor. I think that's what he wanted to leave it on. So you left the movie not being scared, but being like, holy shit, that was a fun ride.
I mean, I remember being scared the first time I saw it, but I think that what does really work here is that the rules that they talk about the entire film, those rules wind up working. They could have gone a really different route. They could have like fucked with the rules and broken them, and that's how everybody was going to win, but they don't do that. And other than Sydney surviving after having sex, which they address in other movies, they play nice by the slasher canon, and it makes for like a really incredibly satisfying end. I know that things are wrapped up in a bow, but that's how most slasher films are, that at least by the end of it, there's some sort of conclusion and setup for a sequel. And I appreciate that there was no innate setup for a sequel here, because that final shot to Billy's head, it's really graphic, it's really gory, it's really incredible. And I remember everybody in the theater that I was in when I saw it, everybody just started applauding at that scene because it was great. It was fun. Like you said, Gene, they invite audience participation, right? And like you can't help but celebrate Sydney's victory, and that's just good.
Well, now's the time in the movie. Now's the time of the podcast. Now's the time of the podcast where we give our wipe scores. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes out of your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is a young Nev Campbell and young Skeet Ulrich making sweet, sweet love upstairs. Or are they? Yeah. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster. It is getting your body caught in a garage door as it opens up and crushes your head. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Scream?
So this is just a philosophical thing on this podcast because we have a weird rating system. And so it's like, okay, do you judge movies on their own, or do you judge them in the genre that they represent, as well as with all the other films in that genre? I don't know. And I think it's hard for a movie that is like so incredibly important to the genre that we're talking about. And as far as slasher movies go, this movie is pretty near perfect for what slasher films are. It's scary, in my opinion. It's well written. It's clever. It's fun. It's held up. And I don't think that you can take for granted how important Scream is. You said at the beginning, Gene, that like the horror genre had kind of stagnated, specifically slasher films. And this completely revitalized things. It brought it back to life in a way that was enough like it was for us to have nostalgia for it, but it was different enough to inspire something completely new. And I think that that alone is why we should respect it and love it. And I argue that it's really, really good. And so I'm going to give it a 0.5 wipe.
Well, Ash, this is one of the rare occasions where we disagree on a movie. I felt like this movie dragged when the killer wasn't around. The parody was too on the nose. It was too overt. And I just wasn't scared. I know slashers are meant... I know slashers aren't meant to really scare us like the way that thrillers and supernatural films do. Like I know that there are movies that are designed to be much scarier than slashers. Slashers have a nudging you to the ribs, ha kind of quality about them. But there should at least be some creepy moments. And you can tell by the casting, like Big D said, this is a comedy with some horror elements, because look at who's in the movie. Henry Winkler, David Arquette, like Matthew Lillard. They emphasize laughs over screams. And personally, I'd rather watch a straightforward slasher movie and laugh at it than be pressured by a comedic take to laugh along with it. The way I could best explain this is I have idiot friends who are funny because they're idiots, not because they're good at telling jokes. And that's what I appreciate about slasher movies, that they are inherently dumb by their nature, they don't need to be dumbed up for laughs. So for me, this is 2.5 wipes. Average, not the best movie I've seen. I certainly didn't mind it. But if you ask me for a Halloween playlist of movies that I would want to play at my house, this is not on it.
Ash, I'm gonna agree with you on this one. This is not a slasher film. This is not a horror film. This film invented a genre. It reinvigorated a dead old genre that was played. This is the purest distilled elements of what made a slasher film work, brought into the 90s. Without this film, the movies today are completely different. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we can look at it that way. I started off this review with a 1.5. I thought it was good. It was better than average. But hell no, at this time, this shit wasn't happening. This film made people excited to see horror films. Parasite does not get made without this film. All of the films, it doesn't.
I would argue like Us by Jordan Peele
but again,
doesn't get made without this film. Parasite is a whole other type of genre, an absolute masterpiece.
I would argue that Screams 2, 3, and 4 don't get made without this.
Oh my God. I'm saying we follow the chain. Horror was dead. This brought it back. It is a one-wipe film, entertaining, fun. The cast seemed to enjoy themselves, and I left the theater with a smile on my. I left the theater with a smile on my face, even though I did not get lucky.
You didn't even get to dry hump.
Hell no! I would have dry humped like a madman.
It's a movie I want to see. All right, with half a wipe from Ash, 1 wipe from Big D, and fucking no fun Gene with a 2.5 wipe score, we'll come out with an average wipe score of 1.3 repeating wipes for Scream.
Solid.
So, Gene, with a wipe score of 1.33 repeating wipes, that now ties this in the 61st spot with some heavy hitters. The Breakfast Club, Shawshank Redemption, The Matrix, Big Trouble in Little China, Last Action Hero, Lethal Weapon, and Office Space. So this is up there. It's not in the top 20, but still it's with some very, very respected films.
I think it's respectable. I think that's fine. Yeah. I think Gene's no fun this week. I mean, Gene, you're very fun some weeks, but this week you're no fun. But I do think that I think it's respectable. Now I want to do The Craft.
I'm going to be fun as shit in about 2 weeks. You better be ready.
I want to fucking do wild things. I'd like to review that hotel scene.
God.
That was a great one. But Gene, talking about film reviews next week, we are doing a very special one.
What a shitty transition.
And a very, shut up, we're going with it.
You can't just use intonation, but Gene.
Why not? I saw the clock here. I know we got to go.
But I mean, like, it's like the worst.
Yeah, what's your problem?
Go on.
Oh, yes, sir.
You've got my attention.
Okay, so people, next week, we will be doing a very different film. 5 youngsters find themselves up against the Oh, shit. I've never seen this movie, so.
Combined, yes. But you've seen that word before.
Oh, my God. I'm trying to look at 5 youngsters find themselves up against the combined might of Dracula, the Mummy, the Gill Man, the Frankenstein monster, who arrive in town in search of the magical amulet. This was commissioned by Christian S. It was released in 1987. I've never seen it. It only made $3.8 million, but people seem to love it.
Goody. I've never seen this. I also appreciate I never know what word you're going to mess up on, because I would never think you'd mess up on a word like combined, but you got amulet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just makes no sense.
I got a lot going on here.
Makes no sense.
Well, thank you, Christian, for... Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us for our Shat Spooktacular. Thank you, Christian, for commissioning our upcoming film. That concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com, or call us at 914-719-SHAT. You can support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatontv.com. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, we wish you a happy Halloween. And be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
Gibson! What? Don't you have an 8 o'clock? What time is it? 9 to 8. Lights out! All right. Blast, blast, blast.
Walter Gibb Gibson lives life on the edge.
What do you think of that guy, Gibb? I don't.
Forget it, Gibson. I hear she likes the intellectual type.
So I'm intellectual and stuff.
You're flanking English. That's your mother tongue and stuff.
Allison Bradbury favors a more orderly existence.
7 o'clock news, 7:30 shower, 7:45 phone call. 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock, I don't know. That's when I rearrange my sock drawer.
They have very little in common.
How would you like to have a sexual encounter so intense it could conceivably change your political views?
Except that each has someone waiting in California.
Gibb, I'm talking to you cordless. What are you doing for Christmas break, huh?
There's a certain someone here I want you to meet.
For Gibb, the girl of his dreams, a guaranteed sure thing.
You want it. I want it. You know I want it.
For Allison, her boyfriend, a respectable, safe thing.
How about a good hot mug of China Black?
And from a small New England college, both are willing to travel across the country by car.
No, I should have taken the bus.
What, and wind up sitting next to some sleazebag? Some sleazebag you don't know?
By foot. By truck.
So what's in California?
Girl, you're supposed to be a sure thing.
A sure thing, no questions asked, no strings attached.
No guilt involved.
A sure thing.
Together, they must overcome enthusiastic travel companions.
Hi, welcome aboard. I'm Mary Ann Webster.
And I'm Gary Cooper, but not the Gary Cooper that's dead. Hop in.
Personality conflicts.
Middle of nowhere, it's cold, there are no cars, you stay in hitch.
You're gonna walk? It's almost 20 miles.
And don't follow me.
And Mother Nature.
I have a credit card.
I have a credit card.
Oh. My dad told me specifically I can only use it in case of an emergency.
Well, maybe one will come up.
But adversity often has a way of making strange bedfellows.
I won't try anything, I swear.
I trust you.
And somewhere on the road to a sure thing, Allison and Gibb just might discover the real thing.
For you.
Thank you.
Embassy Pictures presents a new film by Rob Reiner, The Sure Thing.
My whole life I never had a sure thing.